It's time to talk about everybody's favorite subject. Yeah, I know. Shakespeare. It's the best. We are getting ready to start Julius Caesar, and we've got 2 days to learn about the life of Shakespeare. Yeah, I know you've learned it before, but you forgot most of what you learned. So you've got this awesome video from Biography. It's about an hour long, and there's a worksheet that goes along with it. You really enjoy filling it out. It goes basically in order as the questions appear, and I don't go in order. I don't. So I mean that is a wise thing to do, because you won't be able to find those answers anywhere else except the internet. So I'm going to talk now. You're welcome to have out your study guide, your William Shakespeare questions. But I'm a big fan of Shakespeare, and I have some things to say. So here we go. Completely out of order. First of all, Shakespeare is, without a doubt, the most important writer in history. Not the best. That's, up to personal taste. Nobody's ever going to say, well, they might say, but I won't ever say he's the best. I enjoy Shakespeare. I like the style. I like the 2 or 3 stories that he keeps retelling over and over again. And I think Shakespeare is very entertaining. But we talk about Shakespeare as being important. How can I say he's that important? Well, are there any other classes at Northwest High School named after a person? I don't think so. And there are Shakespeare classes at almost every high school. In several different countries, at least 2-3 continents, Shakespeare is prevalent. And so why? Why has he lasted so long? Well, first of all, we're talking about a guy who has a portion of his life called the lost years, and that makes you cool. There's nothing like having lost years. I think right now might be mine. Anyway, he also wrote 37 plays that we have. We're not even sure if that's all. He didn't get those plays published during his lifetime. He didn't put any time into that, really. Some of them were published here and there, but after his death, Ben Jonson collected up 37 plays and 154 sonnets and created something called The Complete Works of William Shakespeare. It's a book that looks roughly like the Bible. In fact, Shakespeare, The Complete Works of William Shakespeare, is the second most quoted book in the world behind the Bible. And Shakespeare wrote a little bit of the Bible. But we'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so yes, let's see. John Shakespeare, his father, a glover and a leather worker. He had money for a while. So Shakespeare had money when he was young. His father had an important position in the government, and they believe Shakespeare did attend school, which means he was literate. Now, a lot of the Shakespearean conspiracy theorists like the idea that Shakespeare was not literate. He didn't write any of his plays. They've made movies about it. It's very exciting. Conspiracy theories are always fun, rarely true. And so there's a theory that some nobleman didn't want to risk his position because the theaters were not considered to be a place for upper class people. They'd put on plays at the castle for the queen, but they didn't generally think of that as like a good part of town. In fact, the theater was kind of by the brothels and gambling houses and stuff like that. So a little bit of a seedy part of town. And so as not to be associated with that, they believed that someone maybe wrote all of Shakespeare's plays and just pretended like it was him and let him take all the glory. That doesn't hold a lot of water, truthfully, but it's fun. It's an interesting idea. But Shakespeare was also a very talented actor, And he played in a lot of his own plays and stuff like that. He had friends. He also co-wrote a lot of plays later in life, which that would be really tough to do if you were illiterate. So the truth of the matter is Shakespeare did write his plays. In any case, so his father sent him to school, and Shakespeare had several brothers and sisters. You have to get that from the video. But he, his wife, Mary, not wife, sorry, mother, John Shakespeare's wife. Anyway, so after Shakespeare kind of grew up, then there's a portion of his life where nobody knows what was going on. And that's like the bizarre period. As far as Shakespeare's marriage, he married a woman who was quite a bit older than him. And so Anne Hathaway, quite a bit older. I think it was 7 or 8 years. Some people believe it was kind of a patched up thing. During that time, in order to get married, you had to go to church 3 times. It was like called alms or something like that. And so you went to church 3 times and stood up and declared your intention to be married. And then the 3rd time you were married. So it was a really good way to take care of cold feet. Now, that makes a lot of sense because this was, a tradition that started in kind of Catholicism where you weren't allowed to get a divorce. Now, England was converting from Catholicism to Protestant during that time. And so the people could actually be imprisoned for practicing Catholicism after it was ordered that they stop. But we believe Shakespeare was a closet Catholic, that he practiced Catholicism kind of behind the scenes. Anyway, so he got married, and his oldest daughter, Susanna, was born about 6 months after the wedding, which is normal, right? They only had to go to church 1 time to get married, by the way. That's why I brought that up. So some people think that they had a reason to get married. In fact, there's some evidence that Shakespeare was maybe engaged to someone else just months before this whole thing went down. So, I don't know. Nobody knows. Shakespeare wrote a lot of things, but he never wrote a biography. So we've only got bits and pieces to put together to figure out his life. In any case, Shakespeare, after the lost years, there's all kinds of rumors of what he was doing, where he was at. Some people think he was on a ship. Some people think he was in Italy because he has so many plays that are based in Italy and no reason to believe that he'd ever been there. And so he shows up as an actor and beginning to write plays. They didn't like him. He really was upsetting to a lot of the older playwrights and stuff like that because he was, new and people liked him and he was popular. And it took him a little while, but he became kind of a rock star. He was famous in his lifetime. And over the course of writing all those plays, he did become famous. He did, rub shoulders with queens and kings. In fact, he wrote the Scottish play, Macbeth, for King James. He and King James actually had a pretty good relationship, but King James did not like Macbeth. In fact, Macbeth was not performed again during Shakespeare's lifetime, as far as we know, because King James did not like it. But because King James thought the Bible was a little bit boring, he wanted to rewrite it, make it more modern, make it more poetic, make it more exciting for people. And so he gathered together a lot of the writers of the age and had them rewrite sections of the Bible. There is some evidence that Shakespeare rewrote some of the Psalms. There's a couple of Psalms written kind of in a Shakespearean language, and there's one in particular that has the word shake and the word spear in the Psalm. And some people think Shakespeare hid his name in the Bible. Yeah. King James Bible is the most widely read version of the Bible today. In any case, so Shakespeare kind of permeates society. He did have one daughter, Susanna, and then twins, Judith and Hamnet. Now, Hamnet died when he was young, and a lot of people believe the play Hamlet was a tribute to his son, even though in Hamlet the father dies. And so it's not a direct tribute, but in any case, it's kind of sad because Shakespeare feared death, and over in his sonnets, he wrote that the way that a person could live on after death was to have a child, and for him that would mean a boy, one that would carry on his family name. But he only ended out with 2 girls who lived, and he actually made good with his son-in-law, who essentially took over the Shakespearean fortune, the estate, and there are no living Shakespeares today. There are no relatives of Shakespeare who have the name Shakespeare, so kind of a sad story. In any case, so I'm going to get more into Shakespeare tomorrow and talk a little bit more about his life and why he's so important. But, the thing I want you to just think about is that there have been more movies made based on Shakespearean plays than any other writer in history. And if, let's say the conspiracy's true and Shakespeare didn't write his plays, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's an institution. It's like Disney, where because the influence of Shakespeare touches something, it becomes better. When you talk about Disney nobody from Disney wrote the story of Cinderella. Nobody from Disney wrote The Lion King or Little Mermaid or Beauty and the Beast. These things were not written by Disney. Okay, these are stories that Disney took and they made better. That's what Shakespeare is. In fact, almost all of Shakespeare's stories came from somebody else's story they'd told years before, or history. He was big on rewriting, or writing down history and kind of putting it in a new form. And so, it's the writing, it's the language. His plays are written in iambic pentameter. Anytime 2 people of importance are on stage at the same time, they're speaking in iambic pentameter. It's wild. It's amazing because, you talk about how hard it is to write a sonnet or a poem in iambic pentameter, and he wrote entire plays. But he wasn't alone. That was typical of the era. And I think when young people watch Shakespeare or go to a Shakespearean play, I think that the biggest problem is that they're used to things, entertainment mimicking reality. And only recently has entertainment started to mimic reality. You had to imagine a little bit. And, when I was a kid, musicals were big. People don't just start singing. That's not a thing. I sing sometimes just randomly. But when you think about Shakespeare, what you have to realize is that it is not reality. It is an escape from reality. Shakespeare was living in a time when the plague was killing people, when they had to shut down theaters at different times to keep large gatherings from getting together. He was living in a time when, there was a lot of hard living going on. And so going to the theater was an escape. They didn't have an iPhone. They didn't have TVs or radios or any of that stuff. And so the theater was the escape. And so, no, it's not realistic. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be your escape, your romance, your excitement, your battles. And so, I might have answered a few of the questions. You should still probably watch the video. Or like I said, the only other place you could even conceivably find all the information for that worksheet the internet. So, good luck, and I will post another video tomorrow, part 2 of Shakespeare Introduction. All right. Have a great day.